You probably think you know how emotional intelligence looks like. It's being empathetic, calm, doing the right things, and basically warm, fuzzy people doing warm, fuzzy things. But not always. I have met many people with high emotional intelligence, and they don't always seem so emotional. It's not that they always do warm, fuzzy things. Emotional intelligence is not always soft, and sometimes it's strong, quiet, and even uncomfortable. And we are going to talk about this in this video, about the most underrated signs of emotional intelligence. Let's go with sign number 1. So there's common knowledge that emotional intelligence means that you have your emotions under control. But what does that actually mean? In which situation would this come in handy, to have the emotions under control? It's very useful if someone picks a fight with you, if someone insults you, if someone's provoking you, disrespects you in some ways, and a mature person can say, nope, I'm not having that, I won't engage, I will walk away. So that is the first underrated sign of emotional intelligence, is that emotionally mature people know when to walk away. And they do walk away without getting entangled in their emotions. And this can be as simple as just walking away from a conversation, or even quitting your job if you have to. They know it's not worth to fight every battle. They know it's not important to always win at all costs. And that doesn't mean that they are giving up. They are protecting their space, their peace, their energy, their resources, their time. They respond with intention and not with impulse. But that doesn't mean they always have to just walk away. They don't take shit from everyone. Let's look at number 2. Even though emotional intelligent people are able to walk away, it doesn't always mean that that's the right choice to make. It's quite nuanced, because sometimes walking away is not the mature choice. In fact, sometimes it's the easy one. A sign of emotional intelligence is also the ability to push back. And I think that's why emotional intelligence often gets misunderstood. It's very easy to think I'm better than that person, I'm superior, because I remain silent, I remain calm. But that is not always the best choice. Sometimes it is a way to avoid conflict. Sometimes we're just dodging something that is uncomfortable, something that we actually have to face. It's the difficult conversation with a partner. It's setting boundaries with a friend. Sometimes we have to speak up and correct someone's assumptions, and that means we have to push back. And that means we have to be brave and courageous, and it needs some emotional intelligence to do that. So imagine your partner said something to you that hurt you, that bothered you, and you could just walk away, of course, and just avoid bringing it up again because you just want to keep the peace, right? But in reality, that would leave things unresolved, and you create distance, you might feel resentment, and it will show at some point as passive aggression. For example, passive aggression is a very sneaky way of fighting back, but without actually solving things. So the mature way is to stay, to push back in that moment and just say, hey, what you just said to me really hurt my feelings, and I'm not okay with that. Something along the line. It really depends, of course, on what is the discussion about. But you will have to push back and say, hey, this is not okay. I don't feel good about this, and I don't want to be treated that way. Very hard to say. I'm going to be honest with you. I have not been good at this my whole life. I've been trying to avoid conversations like this, or I sometimes just drop the conversation, or I just leave. I distance myself. I'm trying to get better at this, and I see really that it helps to try and push back. And there's another example, something where I'm also practicing, and that is in the world of business. Sometimes when I work with a client and I am in the sales process, they sometimes just assume that a certain service is part of the package, or a certain price is, they just take for granted for whatever I'm offering. And Of course, I could sometimes say, and I did that in the past, I just accept whatever they say, and I'm like, okay, well, that's included, I guess. I just want to have the client, I would just want to get a project. And so I'm just accepting what people assume, and therefore I put myself in a weaker position, and I'm working in a job that is not paying as well as it should, right? So I'm thinking I'm polite, but I'm actually weak, and I'm actually at a disadvantage because I'm just trying to be nice, because I'm just avoiding a conflict, a potential conflict. What I should do instead would be, hey, I'm going to push back at what you just said, and I need to straighten things up. This is not included in the package. The package would be this and that. And it is very simple to do. And in the professional world, it's normal to do that. It's just something I personally had to learn a lot. Underrated sign of emotional intelligence number 3. So you probably heard about active listening. And I think there's like a huge misconception about this. And I myself thought that a good listener needs to do just that, listen. And of course that's the case, but good listening doesn't just mean sitting there in silence and just absorbing what some person says. Sometimes that even means you're not really good at listening, because if you are really good at listening, and that is the next sign, you are using words to listen better, right? Emotionally intelligent people use words to listen better. Ask yourself the question, am I listening so I can respond? Or am I listening so I can understand? And this is a very, very powerful way of finding out what is your actual agenda when you're listening. You're just trying to argue. Do you try to just think of something that you could respond? Or are you trying to argue with that person and you're just looking for holes in their argumentation? So you can just find a smart reply? Or are you really trying to understand what this person is all about, trying to understand their point of view, their emotions, their story? So, and the good thing is you don't need complicated words. You just ask questions. That is one very effective way to actually get into a more engaged listening in trying to understand that person. But there are also very specific questions you can ask that are better than other questions, which we will talk about in a moment. But you can also just say things like, tell me more about that. What was that like for you? So I get a feeling that you feel a little bit overwhelmed here. And of course, they ask a question and they remain quiet and calm and they actually try to listen. But don't always take just silently listening for a good listening skill. Some people will not even listen while they just look at you, and they might fade away in their mind. And I think if people actually don't ask questions, it's a good sign they are not interested in what you are saying. It's a good sign that they don't listen actively, right? If someone is actually saying something, hey, how do you feel about that? Tell me more about this. How did this make you feel? How was it like to do X, Y, Z, right? Really good questioners, really good listeners will try to understand your values, your feelings, the way you felt about something. And that's why you should ask questions in that way. Why did you decide to work this job? Why did you decide to go to this university? What do you love about this language? What do you love about your family? What is the favorite thing to do for you during your holidays? So focus on emotions and values and you will become a better active listener. Sign number 4 is knowing when to interrupt. Now, I know this is a little bit controversial because you would think, okay, interrupting is a very impolite way to do. But there are actually very good reasons to interrupt a person when they are speaking. The first reason is, obviously, they might say something embarrassing, something stupid, and you're a good friend and you're trying to stop them from, embarrassing themselves. You maybe know the situation when you're talking to someone, maybe a stranger, and you just started rambling and you maybe start talking about politics or I don't know, you want to gossip about someone you don't like and you get carried away and then there's this friend who's just kind of getting in between and saying something to distract the conversation before you say something stupid, and you're actually grateful for that because it could have gone very wrong. And of course, this person who interrupts should be very playful. They shouldn't say like, hey, Patrick, you were about to say something very stupid. Let's change the topic. No, this person will try to just distract and say something new, start a new topic, or change the tone to something lighter. So that is a good, smart way to actually interrupt someone, because you want to help someone. And the second way is similar. You want to protect yourself. There are some people I would call vampires. People who just drain your energy, who just keep on talking and talking and talking. They just want your attention, they want your advice, or they just want to have someone they can throw anything at, right? They just want to trauma dump and dump all their thoughts onto you. And emotional, intelligent people, they recognize that, and they might listen for a moment, but they will also know when the time has come to just say, hey, listen, I don't have time for this, or I need to do something else now. And, they will try to have an honest conversation about their boundaries and make clear they have them. And some people will just talk. They will not stop, so you will have to interrupt them. Some people will never take a break, so you will never get a chance to actually say, hey, wait a moment, I need a break. I need to actually go to work. Number 3 this is another example from my business world, that is saving time during a coaching session. Sometimes I'm talking to someone, and of course there's a lot of sharing and a lot of storytelling, and that is important, especially to build a relationship and to build trust. But obviously the time is limited during a coaching session. So sometimes a client comes to me and they talk and tell me all their stories and things that happened throughout the week, and it's not actually necessary to find a solution to focus on an issue. Right, so sometimes I will have to say, hey, I'm sorry to interrupt, but let's focus on the bottom line. What is actually going on? So it's a polite way of saying, hey, come get the bottom line. Let's not waste time here, right? And it's not for me. It's not because I get bored, but it's for the clients, so they can actually focus on the things that really matter to them. Number 5. Now, let's talk about entitlement. Oh my God, I find so many people around me with a very strong sense of entitlement. And I think we all have that at some point, sometimes. But people with a high emotional intelligence, they lack a sense of entitlement. I think you learn a lot about people, how they behave when they don't get the things they want. Just observe someone who has set their mind on something, and then someone tells them, no, you cannot have that. No, that's not possible. And they will lose their shit because they just think they deserve it, right? Because they just think the world evolves around them and they have to get whatever they want. And it doesn't have to be like this very dramatic person, a very dramatic moment. It can be very, very sneaky. Again, it happens to all of us. I'm not excluding myself here. It shows up in very small things, like getting irritated when someone doesn't answer your text. It's that little voice inside our head that says, why is it taking so long? They should know what I need. Why don't they know? Why do I have to do this here? And of course, we are all guilty, but emotional intelligence means that we're catching ourselves thinking that, and we question that voice inside our head. People with high emotional intelligence don't expect the world to shape itself around them. They adapt, they stay patient, they stay grounded. So they don't move through life with a sense of entitlement. They don't rush to be the first in line when the plane lands. They don't assume they deserve better treatment than other people because of who they are. They don't act like rules are for everyone else, and they don't expect people to automatically agree with their opinions. Number 6, emotionally intelligent people know when to open up and when to hold back. Now, do you see a pattern here? It's some things are considered to be emotionally intelligent and some things maybe not, but the intelligent person, the emotionally mature person, is actually able to discern and decide from situation to situation. Sometimes it's time to push back, sometimes it's better to just walk away. And it's the same when it comes to opening up, to being vulnerable, right? And about when to better hold back your feelings and your thoughts. And these days we hear a lot about vulnerability, and it's actually something really valuable. And research also says it leads to better connections, stronger relationships, and with partners and even co-workers, it's something really, really great. We should all learn to be more vulnerable. There's no doubt about that, no question. But not every situation calls for it. Sometimes it's just not the right moment. Sometimes you don't talk to the right person, and it's not the safe space to actually open up. And an emotional intelligent person will feel that. They will intuit into the situation and develop a good sense for when it's good to open up and when to maybe just don't, maybe it's better to walk away and not share all your feelings. And oversharing looks a lot like vulnerability on the surface, but it's actually something very different. True vulnerability is intentional. It's about choosing to share something meaningful in a way that invites connection, not confusion. It respects both your boundaries and the boundaries of the person you're sharing with. And oversharing comes from a place of anxiety. You just want this sense of closeness. You want this other person to listen. You need to dump your thoughts, your feelings onto them. And that is less intentional. It's more like a reflex, something that you cannot even help doing. And instead of creating connection, it can push people away, or it makes them feel responsible for the emotions they were not really ready to hold. Vulnerability says, I trust you enough to share this. Oversharing says, I need to say this, whether it's safe or not. There's one thing that is really important for me to tell you before I end this video, and that is, I don't think that I am good at all these signs, all these things, right? And only because I'm showing that to you. It's something I am learning, I am interested in, and I want you to learn that as well and to become aware of these different signs, about underrated signs of emotional intelligence. And it is a work in progress. It's not something you ever get perfect at, right? And it's some situations you might be, some situations that will be harder. So don't get frustrated if it doesn't work out the way you want. Just pick one of these signs if you're interested in them. If you feel like you resonate and some of those signs make you pause and think, just pick one, practice, and see how you're doing. Notice when you're about to interrupt someone. Catch that little voice inside your head, and just take a breath before you're reacting. Just try to get a little bit better. It's not about being perfect, It's just about noticing. Every day a little better. Choose and try again. And you're already doing much better than you think. All right. Thank you so much for taking your time watching this video. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.